American artist and TV broadcaster Bob Ross developed and presented the popular painting show The Joy of Painting. Ross drew in millions of viewers for years with his soothing voice and peaceful scenery, creating a world where mishaps were merely joyful coincidences. But there was an unsolved mystery behind the scenes, and fans had sensed it for decades. Steve Ross, son of the famous painter Bob Ross, breaks his silence at the age of 57 and reveals something that will alter our perceptions of the artist forever. How did Bob Ross manage to keep his secret? What was Steve's rationale for keeping quiet for such a long time? Come with us as we investigate the life and work of the guy who showed us that success is the result of serendipitous events rather than deliberate planning, and reveal the long-rumored but unproven reality. On October 29, 1942, in Daytona, Florida, Robert Norman Ross came into this world, the son of Jack and Ollie Ross. Ollie Ross was a waitress and Jack Ross was a carpenter when Ross was growing up in Orlando, Florida. He often assisted injured animals get better, which sparked an early fascination with nature. In the 9th grade, Ross dropped out of high school to join his dad in the family business as a carpenter. This early exposure to manual labor instilled in Ross a work ethic that he carried throughout his life. Unfortunately, Ross lost half of his left index finger in an accident and decided carpentry wasn't his thing. He enlisted in the Air Force in 1960. Ross became a medical records technician after joining the U.S. Air Force at the age of 18. He worked his way up to Master Sergeant and was a first sergeant at Alaska's Eielson Air Force Base. Ross began to really commit to painting while serving in the military. The stunning Alaskan scenery had a profound impact on his artistic style. In order to relax and escape the stresses of military service, he would frequently take up a brush during his spare time. Ross took his first painting lesson at an Anchorage USO club when he was there. He had frequent disagreements with his painting instructors, some of whom appeared to lean more towards abstract expression. Ross claimed that while they could describe the components of a tree, they could not provide instructions on how to depict one. While stationed in the Air Force, Ross took a job as a barman to help pay for his maintenance, in addition to peddling his landscape artwork on tourist-friendly novelty gold mining pans. During this time, Ross discovered a television program called The Magic of Oil Painting, hosted by German painter Bill Alexander, and he also started working part-time as a barman. A la prima, meaning first attempt, is a 16th century technique that Alexander used. The wet-on-wet method is the common name for it. With this method, Alexander could complete a painting in less than half an hour. After mastering this technique, Ross began to concentrate on his own artwork and eventually began selling novelty pans printed with paintings of Alaskan landscapes. His military pay was quickly surpassed by the money he made from these sales. After serving until 1981, when he was promoted to Master Sergeant, he left the Air Force. He returned to Florida after retiring to continue his painting studies with Alexander. As a traveling salesperson and lecturer, he joined his brother's Alexander Magic Art Supplies Company. After taking part in one of Ross's private courses in Clearwater, Florida, Annette Kowalski convinced him that he could succeed on his own. They pooled their resources and formed Bob Ross Inc., a company that Kowalski managed for Ross. Alexander later revealed his disillusionment and accusations towards Ross, stating to the New York Times, "What bothers me is not just that he betrayed me, but that he thinks he can do it better." Despite Ross's frequent public acknowledgement of Alexander as his mentor for the wet-on-wet technique, even though Ross came to despise his permed hairstyle, he decided to keep it as he had already incorporated it into the emblem for his company. He and his business partners debuted their public television show, The Joy of Painting, in 1982 because he was deeply committed to spreading the joy of painting to everyone. In the same year, his art class was used as a test run by a station in Falls Church, Virginia. 60 public broadcasting stations, PBS, committed to airing the show in the first year of debut. He was offered creative freedom by PBS station WIPB in 1983, which enticed him to go to Muncie, Indiana, to help create the show. The offer was accepted by him, and the American public may start watching the show on PBS. After moving to Florida in 1989, he continued to make the 3-month trek to Muncie to tape the show. Without compensation, Ross claimed to be the show's host. Books on how to do things, videos, and art supplies were his bread and butter. There was a simple studio backdrop for the show with Ross seated at a canvas as he demonstrated the process to the audience. During its initial run, the show aired for 31 seasons with 13 episodes in each. Bob went on a cross-country painting tour to promote his show and get more people to watch. A small number of students initially showed up to the classes that were held in malls and art stores. Live audiences for his public lessons increased as news of the famous TV show spread. Bob Ross produced more than 400 episodes between the years 1982 and 1994, and since then the joy of painting has grown into and remains among public television's most cherished and esteemed shows. Collaborations between Bob Ross and Annette and Walt Kowalski were crucial to Bob's financial success. The Kowalski family helped Ross expand his brand by establishing Bob Ross Inc., which managed the creation of Ross's art supplies, instructional books, and television shows. They were instrumental in making the joy of painting a household name thanks to their business acumen. In addition to filming animals, mostly squirrels, in his yard, Ross would often rescue squirrels and other animals. He frequently depicted squirrels in his works. Approximately 30,000 works of art are attributed to Ross during his lifetime. Paintings by Bob Ross are extremely rare and fetch thousands of dollars at auction, often more than $10,000, despite the artist's prolific output. Big auction houses have failed to sell a single Bob Ross painting. Though he was opposed to commercializing his artwork, Bob Ross Inc., the firm he established, still owns a number of paintings that he created for his show. The joy of painting. Nevertheless, an unnamed purchaser now owns Bob Ross's A Walk in the Woods, created during the pilot episode of The Joy of Painting. This sale took place not long ago. Ryan Nelson, owner of the Minneapolis-based Modern Artifact Gallery, said that he bought the artwork from a woman who was involved in the making of his show and decided to buy it after the episode had aired, leading to the record-breaking auction price of $9.85 million. The artist that created this work is the people. You won't hear this establishment gushing about Bob Ross here. According to what Nelson indicated, Bob Ross receives more than 350,000 monthly Google searches. According to public relations expert Megan Hoffman, last year Nelson bought the artwork and put a not-for-sale price tag of $9.85 million on it. Not only was A Walk in the Woods the first work to air on Ross's program, but it also demonstrated his soothing demeanor and his ability to make art that anybody can understand. Rather than wealthy collectors, Ross's works are sought after by the general public who appreciate the joy of painting, according to an art value firm. These works are described as a combination of great art and entertainment memorabilia. Coincidentally, collectors mostly exchange works by Ross from before he started his television series. Many significant connections, personal challenges, and life events impacted Bob Ross's professional path. Several marriages, family strife, and intricate business relationships all contributed to his arduous journey. The life of Ross was marked by 3 marriages and the birth of 2 children. Very little is known about his brief teen affair or the child he fathered from it, although he did have a child. Stephen Ross was born to Ross and his first wife Vivian Ridge in 1966, after their 1965 wedding. Motivated by his father's artistic endeavors, he embarked on a painting journey, making an appearance on The Joy of Painting, and eventually became a qualified instructor for his father's program. But because of his adultery, Ross and Vivian filed for a divorce in 1977. In 1977, Ross wed Jane Ross for the second time. She was essential in managing his commercial affairs, especially when he was first starting out in the art world. Jane passed away in 1992 after a courageous battle with illness. Both his personal life and the operations of Bob Ross Inc. were profoundly affected by his death. The operating agreement for The Joy of Painting said that the other partners, Bob and the Kowalski family, were to automatically get half of Jane's ownership. In a subtle way, this reduced Bob's control over his company. A few months before he passed away in 1995, Bob wed Linda Brown, his third wife. During his illness, Linda, who was a nurse, took care of him. When it came to his private life, Ross was quite tight-lipped and preferred to keep things under wraps. The 2011 public broadcasting service documentary Bob Ross, The Happy Painter, shows that there are merely a few interviews with his immediate circle of friends and relatives. Bob Ross, Inc. and Ross's relatives reached a legal agreement that deleted any further negotiations. Even now, with the Kowalskis at the helm, the firm takes the security of Ross's intellectual property and personal data very seriously. Bob Ross received the devastating news of his lymphoma diagnosis in 1994. Ross had prepared himself for a brief life and dealt with a plethora of health problems during his adult years, during which he smoked heavily. Ross continued working on new episodes of The Joy of Painting even while he was fighting cancer. However, he lived to be 52 years old before succumbing to the illness on July 4, 1995. 7 of Ross's paintings were finished before he passed away. They were all meant for a possible 30th season of The Joy of Painting. The television artist's final resting place is at Gotha, Florida's Woodlawn Memorial Park, where a plaque honoring him bears the name Bob Ross. Ross made the conscious decision to shield the public from learning of his cancer diagnosis. Friends and family didn't learn the specifics of his lymphoma until after he had passed away. If a partner were to die while Bob Ross, Inc. was in formation, the surviving partners would each receive half of the partner's share. The Kowalskis became the only proprietors of the company after Ross and his second wife, who was also a partner, passed away. Using Ross's name for their painting materials business was the primary emphasis of the Kowalskis. Their attitude towards Ross's loved ones turned violent. In 1994, after he was diagnosed with cancer, a heated court battle ensued. The Kowalskis were hell-bent on monopolizing Bob Ross's trademarks, from his signature hairdo to his paintbrushes. A contentious disagreement erupted between the Kowalski family and the actor's family over the actor's reputedly calm film persona and the financial benefits and ownership of Bob Ross, Inc.'s intellectual property. At their most antagonistic, the Kowalskis tried to stop Steve from ever use his father's likeness or name in an artistic endeavor again. Steve was compelled to sign a legal document merely to continue instructing students in the renowned wet-on-wet painting technique that his father popularized, even though he was Bob's kid and the appointed successor. It was also revealed that they tried to coerce Ross into giving them control of his assets before he died, even though he was sick. Instead of include the Kowalskis in his will, Ross left everything to his son Steve and half-brother Jimmy Cox. According to the Kowalskis, Ross did not have the legal authority to sell or give away any of his creations because they were all deemed commissions. In the end, the Kowalskis were victorious in court. The company was more open to the concept of expanding Ross's brand beyond its main sector of painting products after Joan Kowalski took over as leader and the Kowalskis retired. As a result, his image has been widely promoted since the 2010s and beyond. After some negotiation, Joan was able to get ownership of Steve Ross's likeness and identity for Bob Ross, Inc. from Jimmy Cox and Steve Ross, in exchange for guaranteeing that Steve Ross could resume his art career without worrying about legal consequences. After his father passed away, Steve Ross allegedly felt more comfortable showing his paintings publicly because of this agreement. In addition, Joan revived a new season of The Joy of Painting, which will include Nicholas Hankins, an instructor with Bob Ross, Inc. hosting the show and exhibiting the paintings that Ross had intended for season 32. Approximately $110 million was Bob Ross's net worth when he passed away in 1995. All of his assets, such as his vast art collection and the rights to his name and likeness, which became quite valuable over time, are difficult to put a price on, and this range reflects that. The Joy of Painting was a public broadcasting service PBS series that brought Ross fame. In it, he taught people how to paint using his signature wet-on-wet oil technique. The very nature of public broadcasting meant that he could not profit directly from the show. Instead, he made a living by selling art materials, books, and painting courses under the Bob Ross brand. The Bob Ross name has become much more valuable in the years after he passed away. His image and works are licensed for a range of items in media, and his intellectual property, which is maintained by Bob Ross, Inc., continues to be a lucrative asset. For a long time, Bob Ross's devoted audience enthusiastically accepted the charismatic artist's TV persona. Ross gave the impression of someone who was perpetually content with life thanks to his mild demeanor, unkempt hair, and images of happy small trees. After his tragic death at the young age of 52, however, a darker truth about the latter years of this famous painter's life began to emerge. In a recent interview with Steve Ross, it was revealed that Bob Ross, whose artwork was known to provide joy, worked tirelessly to protect his identity and legacy. Steve went on to say that every time his normally placid father got on the phone, he would explode. He could hear his own cries from outside the home, saying things like, "You're not getting my name," on a frequent basis. The Kowalski family, Bob Ross's long-term business associates, were the targets of those enraged yells, and Bob Ross was distraught over it. Profit was the only goal of the Kowalskis. The Kowalskis were less concerned about losing a buddy and more concerned about how his death would affect their business. He had been nothing more than a commercial endeavor to them. With Ross near death, the Kowalskis began hatching a scheme to seize complete ownership of Bob Ross, Inc. and its associated intellectual property. Their goal was to dismantle Ross's character in every manner possible, right down to the brushes he used. The Kowalskis began a tangled web of legal disputes despite Ross's will that left everything to his son Steve and half-brother upon his death. They challenged Bob's will, asserting their entitlement to all of Bob's assets acquired via his employment at Bob Ross, Inc. This was a make-or-break situation for the Kowalskis. They took a hard line and tried to stop Steve from ever utilizing his father's likeness or name in an artistic endeavor again. Annette Kowalski informed Steve just 2 days after his father passed away that he could not use the Bob Ross name in any commercial endeavors. The Kowalskis were hell-bent on stealing every last dime from the brand Bob Ross built, while Ross devoted his final minutes to ensuring that his beloved TV series would air for years to come. In the end, Steve was successful in his case to protect his father's teaching methods and legacy through his art courses, but the Kowalskis kept many precious possessions, including a number of Bob Ross's famous landscape paintings, thousands in number. These frightening facts validated fan fears about the apparently humble and generous Bob Ross, indicating that he was actually a multifaceted person who faced substantial personal and professional obstacles. Because his family chose to share these painful realities, Ross will always be remembered as an esteemed artist and a person who felt obligated to fiercely defend his creative accomplishments right up to his death. Bob Ross made an indelible mark on the art world and popular culture despite leading a brief life. His optimistic outlook, approachable style, and calming demeanor have inspired millions of people and will continue to do so.